children need a father. Society is currently dying on the altar of single motherhood, and children need a father. And so if you're putting other people's needs before your own, then you should have chosen a better father or worked it out with the one you had. Because the children need a father, and putting their needs ahead of your own means find some way to work it out with the dad. Now, if you just married some completely unrepentant crazy, then you're putting your own needs before your future children's needs. I'm so great, people can't say no. I mean, the show. This is including your contribution to this conversation, right?
Mm-hmm.
The show is so great, people can't say no.
Mm-hmm.
If she didn't have a lot of tolerance for bad behavior, she'd still be married to the father of her child. Because either the father of her child was a really great guy and she left him because she's mean and selfish and petty and doesn't care about the outcomes for her children, or he's a terrible guy and she had children with a terrible guy and left him because he was a terrible guy, in which case she doesn't have a lot of tolerance for bad behavior, except she's willing to have sex and procreate with it. So that's kind of the ultimate genetic yes to any behavior, right? Anyone you have sex with, you're promoting that whole gene pool. Single moms are terrible, terrible parents as a whole. Statistically, there is no single better predictor of a negative or terrible outcome for a child than that he was raised by a single mother. It's worse than being in a minority. It's worse than being poor. It's worse than living in a disadvantaged neighborhood. The single most negative factor for a child's outcome is to be raised by a single mother. Single moms are terrible, terrible, terrible parents. They consume massive amounts of resources. They're entitled. They tend to clamor for more. And their offspring tend to cause a lot of social problems. Much higher rates of delinquency, crime, drug addiction, abuse characteristics, promiscuity, and single mothers reproduce like bacteria in a petri dish because they produce children who tend to become single mothers as well. So basically, they are a blight and a plague upon society, which is why, until the welfare state, society put a huge amount of resources into trying to prevent the formulation of single mother households. Now, it could be true that single dads are also equally toxic to children, but there's so few of them, it hasn't really been studied. But single motherhood is the most dangerous environmental toxin for children to be around. So she is not a great mom because a great mom has a father for her children. That's called being a great mom. What you found is a woman who has had sex with a man who's bad as a parent, right? So she's chosen the wrong guy to have children with because there's really only a couple of possibilities. And we're not counting, don't talk to me about widows. Widows are functionally the same as dual parents when it comes to how their children turn out. A single mom means somebody who's not married or divorced and not cohabiting with the father of her child. So either it's a great woman who chose a really bad man, in which case she can't be a great woman because she chose to have children with a really bad man, thus exposing those children to the environmental toxin known as single motherhood. Or she's a really terrible woman who chose a terrible man, in which case, hey, if you get involved with her, there's going to be a creepy, vile, violent ex floating around who's going to be really angry that you're the new dad to his difficult children. Or she is a terrible woman who chose a great guy, in which case he can't be that great a guy because he had kids with a terrible woman. Basically, she's just a very, very bad decision maker. And why is that? Well, because if you have kids and you're married, your IQ is about 101, slightly above average. If you're divorced or separated, 97.8. And if you're unmarried, your IQ is a whoppingly low 93.6. That's for men. For women, it is pretty much the same. Married, 101.3. Divorced, separated, 98.7. Unmarried women, the same as unmarried men, who are parents, 93.6. So a good reason to not date a single mom is that they're not very smart, which is why they're single moms to begin with. And given that intelligence has a significant genetic component, it means that her kids and any kids you have with her are likely to be a little bit below the curve as a whole. There are exceptions. I myself was raised by a single mother.